Hello and welcome to the English Podcast Lab. I'm Mike, and today we're going to do a deep dive into a topic that could actually change the way you connect with everyone around you.
Oh, yeah.
How to be a better listener.
It's so important.
And with me, I have Sarah to unpack all of this.
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here.
Now, I think we all know listening is important, but we're not just talking about catching words here.
Right.
We're talking about, really getting someone connected on a deeper level.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people think of listening as just sort of like waiting for their turn to talk or thinking about what they're going to say next. But it's so much more than that.
Yeah.
It's about, really trying to understand the other person, their perspective, their feelings, and really, building that connection with them.
I love that. And it makes me think of a phrase, listening to connect.
I love that.
Because it takes the focus off of us and puts it onto the person speaking.
Totally.
And makes them feel like they're really understood.
It's not about, listening to reply or listening to learn something. It's about listening to connect, which is a whole different, ball game.
Yeah, it's like a whole nother level.
Absolutely.
And so let's get practical here.
Okay.
Why does good listening really matter?
Yeah.
We know it's nice, but what's the impact?
Well, on a very basic level, it's really the foundation of any strong relationship, when you think about it, it creates trust. It helps you to build rapport with people. And when someone really listens to you, you feel seen, you feel valued, you feel more likely to open up and share, right?
Totally. It's like you're saying, hey, you're important to me. Mm-hmm. I care about what you have to say.
Exactly. And you're saying, I respect you.
Yes.
I want to understand you. And there's just something, really powerful about that. And it's not just a feel-good thing, right? It's like there's an actual therapeutic aspect to it, both for the speaker and the listener. Think about it. When you have a conversation and the other person is really listening to you, you feel validated, you feel like your emotions are, being acknowledged, and that can be incredibly healing,
Totally. Both sides of the conversation, if both people are doing it well and feel heard.
Absolutely.
It can be therapeutic.
It can be incredibly therapeutic, yeah. And it's not just about personal relationships either, right?
Right.
Think about the workplace.
Yeah, that's a great point.
How important is listening in a professional setting?
Right. It's huge.
It can completely change the way a team functions, the way people interact with each other.
For sure, improve teamwork, less conflict, things actually getting done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Can lead to, better decision-making,
Yeah.
more effective problem-solving, and just overall a more positive and productive work environment.
Yeah. Good listening is, it's a superpower at work if you can really do it well.
It really is, yeah. It's such a valuable skill to have, and it's something that, we can all benefit from.
Okay, so we've talked about all the good sides of it, but let's flip the script for a second.
Okay.
What happens when we're bad listeners?
Oh, yeah.
We've all been on the receiving end of that at some point, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it does not feel good, does it?
No, not at all.
You feel ignored, you feel dismissed, what you're saying doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like you're talking to a brick wall sometimes.
Yeah, it can feel very invalidating, and it can really hurt relationships over time,
Yeah.
if you consistently feel like you're not being heard, that trust erodes, you start to withdraw.
Yeah.
You stop sharing those important parts of yourself.
Yeah, you stop opening up, you stop being vulnerable.
Absolutely. And it becomes this negative cycle,
Right.
The less heard we feel, the less likely we are to open up and share, and then the less the other person actually has to listen to.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So yeah, it can be very damaging to relationships.
Yeah, so how do we spot a bad listener?
Okay.
Besides, the obvious, scrolling through their phone while you're trying to tell them something really important.
Right.
What are some other things?
Well, I think interrupting is a huge one, If you're constantly interrupting the other person, that's a pretty clear sign that you're not really listening.
Right. It's like they're just waiting for their turn to jump in.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're more interested in what they have to say
Yeah.
than what you're trying to get across.
It's like they're not even trying to absorb what you're saying.
Yeah.
They're just waiting for their turn to talk.
Right. And it can be, it can be really frustrating for the speaker because they feel like they're not being heard.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like their thoughts and feelings are not being valued.
Mm.
And it can really shut down the conversation.
Yeah, what about planning their response while you're still talking?
Oh, yeah. That's a classic bad listener move, right? Like, if you can tell that the person is already thinking about what they're going to say next before you've even finished speaking.
Yeah.
That's a pretty clear indication that they're not really present in the moment.
Right.
They're not really listening to you.
And what about like distractions? I think that's a big one too.
Yeah, distractions are huge, and not just external distractions like, phones or TVs.
Right.
But also internal distractions, like our own thoughts and worries can really get in the way of us being present and listening to the other person.
So it's like those external ones, but then also all the stuff that's going on in our own head.
Exactly. Yeah, and it can be really hard to quiet those internal distractions,
Yeah.
But it's so important because if we're not present, we're not really listening.
So if bad listening has all these downsides, why do we do it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is it just laziness or is there something more to it?
I think it's a mix of things, honestly,
Yeah.
I think sometimes people genuinely just aren't aware, like maybe they haven't learned good listening skills.
Right.
Or they don't realize how their actions are impacting others,
Like they don't understand how it's coming across.
Exactly. Yeah.
And could also be like a defense mechanism, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Like if someone's uncomfortable with a topic, they might just shut down or interrupt.
Right, as a way to kind of protect themselves.
Yeah, protect themselves from having to deal with something that's uncomfortable for them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I also think, like, we live in a world of constant stimulation, right?
Like, oh my gosh.
It's just, it's constant.
Yeah.
And I think
constantly multitasking.
Yeah, and I think it takes a lot of effort to slow down.
It does.
And like really focus on what someone's saying.
Absolutely. And I think, in today's world, it's so easy to get distracted, We're constantly bombarded with information, with notifications, with, all these things that are pulling for our attention.
Yeah.
And so it really does take a conscious effort to just slow down, be present, and truly listen to what the other person is saying.
Yeah, it sounds like becoming a better listener is about being like deliberate.
Yeah.
Changing our mindset.
Yeah.
Building new habits.
Absolutely, yeah.
And something we can cultivate.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like it's not enough to just passively hear words.
Right.
Like, we need to be active.
Yes, exactly. It's not enough to just, sit there and let the words wash over you. You have to be actively engaged. You have to be present. You have to be showing the speaker that you're with them.
Engaging, purposeful. I mean, would you agree with that?
100%. Yeah. That's where active listening comes in. It's about being fully present, both mentally and emotionally, and showing the speaker that you're right there with them.
It's about like making that connection, not just downloading the information.
Yeah, it's not about, just trying to get the facts.
Right.
It's about really connecting with the person on a deeper level.
It's about making them feel heard, understood, and like valued.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that can make such a difference in the quality of your interactions.
Okay, I'm ready to get tactical.
Okay.
How do we actually do active listening?
Okay, great question.
What are the skills that we can develop?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's just about paying attention.
Okay.
And I know that sounds really obvious, but it's more than just, registering the words, right?
Yeah.
It's about minimizing distraction.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being present in that moment.
So putting the phone down, turning towards the person, open body language.
No, exactly. You're sending a message with your body just as much as your words that you're here and you're listening.
Yeah.
And then there are the verbal cues that we use to show that we're following along.
Mm-hmm.
Like little things. I see. Tell me more.
Yeah. Simple but effective.
Yeah, totally. you know? They encourage the speaker to keep going, you know, and they let them know that you're tracking with them.
Right.
And don't underestimate the power of asking open-ended questions.
Yeah.
You know, instead of those yes or no questions.
Right.
Ask questions that invite the person to share more, you know?
Yeah.
Their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences.
So instead of like,
Yeah.
did you have a good day?
Right.
It's what was the best part of your day?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that can make a huge difference.
It can lead to a much richer conversation, you know?
Yeah.
And you'll learn so much more about the other person.
Yeah. I love that. And there's summarizing what you've heard, you know, making sure you're getting it right.
Right. That's really important.
Like saying like, it sounds like you're frustrated because of X
Yeah.
and you're not sure how to proceed.
Right. Or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like just kind of reflecting back what you've heard
Yeah.
to make sure that you're understanding it correctly.
Yeah.
And to give the speaker an opportunity to clarify if you're not.
Yeah. And that can help build trust, right?
It does. It shows that you're really listening,
Yeah.
that you're really trying to understand their point of view.
Right.
And that you care about what they have to say.
Yeah.
And, you know, when people feel heard and understood,
Yeah.
they're much more likely to open up and share.
Okay, now we've kind of covered like the basics here, but let's go a little deeper. Okay, there's a more in-depth framework for active listening that involves like three aspects: cognitive, emotional, and behavioral.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we break this down?
Sure, yeah. So the cognitive aspect is really about paying attention to all the information that's being conveyed, you know,
Okay.
both what's being said directly and what's implied. you
Yeah.
know? So reading between the lines.
Yeah, exactly. It's about using all of your senses to kind of get the full picture of what the speaker's trying to communicate.
Picking up on the nuances of the conversation.
Absolutely. And then there's the emotional aspect, right?
Right.
Which is about, well, how do our own emotions play into being a good listener?
Right.
And as we talked about earlier, you know, our feelings can sometimes get in the way of us listening effectively, right? Like if we're feeling defensive or triggered, we might tune out, we might interrupt, you know, we might misinterpret what the speaker is saying.
Yeah, so we're not really hearing what they're saying. We're just hearing our own stuff, our own baggage.
Yeah, and so the emotional part of active listening is really about managing our own reactions, right?
Absolutely.
Staying calm, staying compassionate, even when it's tough.
Yeah, which is, I'm sure, easier said than done.
Oh, it definitely is, but it's so important because, you know, if we can manage our own emotions, we can create that safe, non-judgmental space where the speaker can really share without feeling criticized or attacked.
Yeah, like they don't have to get defensive. They can just kind of let it all out.
Exactly.
And then lastly, there's the behavioral aspect. What does that involve?
So this is all about showing your interest and understanding through your words and your actions.
Okay.
Things like eye contact, you know, encouraging body language, asking clarifying questions, summarizing what you've heard, you know, all those techniques we've been talking about.
Putting it all together to show that you're present, that you're engaged.
Exactly. You know, it's about making the speaker feel heard, seen, understood through your words, your actions, and just your overall demeanor.
Yeah, so it's like you're saying like, I'm here with you.
Yes.
I'm present.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Absolutely.
And this is great stuff. But I want to make sure our listeners walk away with like some tangible takeaways here.
Okay.
Let's put together a little cheat sheet
Okay, love it.
of actionable tips to become a better listener.
Yeah, let's make this easy for people.
What do you say?
I'm all for that. You know, let's give them something that they can actually start using right away.
Okay. Number 1,
Okay.
repeat the last few words the speaker said.
Yeah, love that one.
It confirms you're with them. Gives them a minute to think.
Yeah, it's such a simple technique, but it's so effective, you know? It just shows that you're paying attention.
Yeah.
That you're following along.
Yeah.
And it allows for that natural pause in the conversation.
Okay, number 2, avoid paraphrasing.
Yes.
Unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right.
stick with directly repeating what they said.
Yeah. I think sometimes people think that paraphrasing shows that they're listening, but it can actually create confusion
Right.
and misinterpretations, So whenever possible, just stick with the speaker's exact words.
Okay. Number 3. Offer. Like little verbal cues.
Yeah.
Like, uh-huh.
Yeah.
Or, wow.
Yeah. Those are good.
But only if they feel genuine.
Yeah. Don't force it.
Yeah.
These should come naturally from your engagement in the conversation.
Yeah. Don't make them sound fake.
Exactly. If they sound fake, they're going to do more harm than good.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4. Pay attention to nonverbal cues.
Yeah. So important.
Tone of voice, facial expressions, body language. It all tells a story.
It does. It all tells a story,
Yeah.
And remember, listening goes beyond words, right?
Yeah.
It's about paying attention to all those nonverbal signals
Right.
that the person is giving you, because those can often give you a much deeper understanding of the message that they're trying to convey.
Okay. Number 5. Ask more questions than you think you need to.
Oh, yeah. Love that word.
Showing a genuine interest in their perspective.
Curiosity is key, Ask questions to clarify, ask questions to go deeper, and just to show the speaker that you're genuinely invested in what they have to say.
Okay, number 6. Minimize distractions as much as possible.
So important, both external distractions, like we talked about, phones, TVs, other people, but also internal distractions, like our own thoughts, our own worries.
There's stuff going on in our own heads.
Exactly.
You got to try to quiet that down as best we can.
And it's not always easy,
Right.
Our minds are busy places, but, just being aware of those distractions and making an effort to kind of bring yourself back to the present moment can make a huge difference.
Okay, number 7. Own your shortcomings.
Well, that's a good one.
If you get distracted, you miss something,
Yeah.
acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Ask for clarification.
It's okay. We're all human, we all get distracted sometimes. We all miss things.
Yeah.
And if you find that your mind has wandered, just admit it and ask the speaker to repeat themselves.
Like, hey, sorry, I zoned out for a second there. Can you repeat that?
Exactly. Yeah.
And number 8, don't plan your response
Oh, yeah.
while the other person's talking.
So important.
Stay present.
Yes.
Absorb what they're saying.
It's so tempting, though, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
To start forming our response in our head
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
while the other person's talking.
Yeah.
But resist that urge.
Yeah.
Stay focused on their words and save your thoughts for when they're finished speaking.
Yeah, because you might be planning a response to something they didn't even end up saying,
Exactly. Or you might miss something important that they say.
Right.
Because you're so focused on what you're going to say next.
Right. And then finally, number 9, be aware of your own emotions.
Yes.
If you're getting triggered,
Yeah.
take a moment to calm yourself down.
Yeah. If you're feeling overwhelmed, take a few deep breaths. Maybe even excuse yourself for a minute to regroup. Use whatever grounding techniques work for you to kind of bring yourself back to the present moment.
Right.
So that you can really listen effectively.
Okay, these 9 tips
Yeah.
are fantastic. Like, great starting point for anyone who's trying to improve their listening skills.
Absolutely.
But let's dig even deeper here.
Okay.
What are some of the more subtle aspects of active listening that we might not even realize we're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the fascinating thing about effective listening is that it's not just one skill, right?
Right.
It's actually a whole bunch of different abilities working together.
Okay.
And some are trickier than others.
So it's more complex than we might think.
It is, yeah.
It's not just checking boxes with these 9 tips.
Right.
There's layers to this.
There are, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's helpful to kind of think about it in terms of picking up skills, which is about taking in information, and then staying present skills, which is about, staying focused throughout the conversation.
Right. So we're not just passively receiving information.
Yeah.
It's like we're receiving it.
Yeah.
We're processing it. We're responsive.
Yeah, it's a dynamic process.
Yeah.
It's not just, sitting there and taking it all in. It's about, really engaging with the information.
I see, yeah. And each stage requires different skills.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is getting really interesting.
Yeah.
So can you give us a few examples of these more subtle listening skills?
Sure, yeah.
The ones that we might not even know we're using.
Well, let's start with auditory processing, which is, how our brain makes sense of sounds, right? This is really the foundation of listening.
Yeah.
And it can actually be improved with practice, believe it or not.
So some people are naturally better at this than others.
Yeah.
But we can all get better.
Absolutely. With practice, And then there's the skill of regulating your emotional response. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but this is really about using techniques like meditation or grounding exercises to stay calm and present even when things get heated.
Right, because if we're hijacked by our emotions, we can't really listen to the other person.
We can't. We're too caught up in our own stuff.
Yeah.
We're too busy reacting to what they're saying.
Right.
To really hear them.
So this is about almost taking a step back.
Yeah, exactly.
From our own
creating some space.
Emotions.
Yeah.
And just being present with what the other person's saying.
Exactly.
Okay, and then what was the last one?
And then the last one is integrate multiple sources of information.
Okay.
And this is about learning to listen to words, body language, tone of voice, all those other cues at the same time.
Yeah.
To kind of get that complete picture.
So it's not just the words.
Yeah, it's not just the words.
It's all the other signals.
It's everything, yeah.
Yeah.
And it can be a lot to juggle,
It sounds like a lot.
It is, but with practice, we can get better at it.
Okay, so active listening is a full body experience.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's something that, we can refine over time.
Yeah.
And it can lead to much more fulfilling and meaningful conversations.
This is great. I think we've covered the downsides of bad listening, the benefits of good listening, the nitty-gritty of the active listening techniques.
Absolutely.
But before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
About the impact of listening on us.
Yeah.
On the listener.
Absolutely.
Not just, making other people feel good.
Yeah, that's a really important point because as we've been discussing, good listening isn't just about making other people feel good, right?
Right.
It's actually deeply beneficial to us, to our own growth and well-being.
So tell us, how does becoming a better listener benefit me?
Okay, great question.
What's in it for me?
Well, first of all, I think it really expands your understanding,
Okay.
You're exposed to new perspectives, new ideas, things that you might never have considered otherwise.
Like opening a window to a whole new world.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
Thought.
Yeah, and as you encounter these different perspectives, it challenges your own assumptions, your own biases, and it makes you more intellectually flexible and open-minded.
Yeah, which is, I think, crucial in today's world, right? Where we're just bombarded with information and opinions
constantly
from every direction.
And it's so easy to get caught up in our own little bubbles,
right?
Yeah. Surrounded by people who think the same way we do.
Yeah, you get tunnel vision.
Yeah, exactly. But when you make a conscious effort to listen to people who have different viewpoints, it just broadens your perspective, It helps you to see the world in a more nuanced way.
And then it also helps you process your own thoughts and feelings, right?
Yeah, it really does. It kind of makes you think about all those missed connections, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
All those times when we could have understood each other better, if we had just listened more closely.
Right. Yeah, and it emphasizes how important it is to show up as a listener.
Yeah.
Ready to engage.
Absolutely.
Ready to understand.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, I think, that when we do listen deeply, not only do our relationships benefit, but we benefit ourselves.
Yes.
We open ourselves up to a world of learning and growth.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And speaking of learning, I'm curious.
Yeah.
We've laid out all these active listening techniques,
Mm-hmm.
but I think some people might find them more challenging than others,
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone who's really struggling to be a better listener?
That's a great question, And I think it's important to remember that we all have our own communication styles.
Right.
Like some of us are naturally more talkative.
Yeah.
Some of us are more introspective and quiet.
Absolutely.
And so there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really about recognizing your own unique style and finding what works for you.
Yeah, and I think it's such an important reminder that we can get so caught up in trying to be perfect listeners that we forget to be authentic and genuine
Absolutely.
in our interactions.
Yeah, it's not about, being a robot
Right.
and following all the rules perfectly.
Right.
It's about, really connecting with the other person in a way that feels natural.
Yeah, and that's where self-compassion comes in,
Yeah.
Like being kind to yourself,
Absolutely.
recognizing we're all works in progress.
Yeah,
It's okay to make mistakes as we're learning.
it is, you know.
So instead of beating ourselves up, we should focus on gradual improvement
Yeah.
over time
I think that's such a good point, Mike.
and celebrating those small wins along the way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So now, from your experience working with people on their communication,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the most common obstacles people face when it comes to listening?
Well, I think one of the biggest hurdles is just overcoming that kind of ingrained habit of wanting to talk more than we listen.
Yeah, I think especially in a culture that often values
Yeah.
extroversion,
Yeah.
quick wit.
Absolutely.
We're often conditioned to believe that being a good communicator means being a good talker.
Right. The person who can command the room and, tell the best stories and
Yeah.
have the wittiest comebacks.
Right.
But, in reality, it's often the quiet listeners who have the most impact.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are really present,
Yeah.
taking it all in.
Absolutely. They're not thinking about what they're going to say next. They're
Right.
just there, absorbing everything. And
Right.
and they're the ones who really create that space for others to feel heard and understood.
Hmm. I think another challenge is dealing with distractions,
Oh, huge.
whether it's our phones
Yeah.
or our own thoughts,
Yeah.
noisy environment, it can be really hard to stay focused on the speaker.
Especially in today's world, we are just constantly bombarded with information.
Our attention spans are shrinking by the minute, it feels like.
They really are. Yeah. And I think it's because we're just so used to, having constant stimulation.
Yeah.
We're always checking our phones. We're always looking at screens.
Right.
And so when we're in a conversation, it can be really hard to just, sit there and focus on what the other person is saying.
Yeah. So how do we combat that? How do we actually train our brains to be better listeners?
Well, I think there are a lot of different techniques that we can use, from mindfulness meditation to simple breathing exercises, anything that helps to kind of quiet the mind
Okay.
and focus our attention.
To develop in a practice.
Yeah, I think it's really about developing a practice,
Mhm.
and being intentional about creating space for listening.
Right.
Whether that's, setting aside time for a one-on-one conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Or, putting our phones away during a family meal.
Right.
It's really about sending that message,
Mhm.
both to ourselves and to others,
Yeah.
that listening is a priority.
It's making it important.
Right.
It's something we value.
Absolutely.
You're a big believer in the power of storytelling.
Yeah, I am.
Do you have an anecdote or example that really highlights?
Yeah, I do actually. I have a story that comes to mind.
Okay.
It's about a young woman who had a really difficult relationship with her father.
Oh,
They had very different views on the world.
right.
They often clashed over politics and social issues.
So a lot of tension and misunderstanding between them.
A lot, and the daughter really felt like her father never truly listened to her.
Really?
You know, he was always quick to judge, to dismiss her opinions.
So she felt unheard and unseen.
Exactly. Yeah. And she was, really frustrated and hurt by that.
Right.
But then something shifted one day during a conversation. She decided to try a different approach.
Oh, okay.
Instead of arguing or defending her viewpoint, she just listened to her father.
Wow.
She made a conscious effort to really understand his perspective.
So to see things from his side.
Yeah. And to her surprise, as she listened with genuine curiosity, she started to see things from his side,
Yeah.
She began to understand the experiences that had shaped his beliefs, the values that were important to him.
So it was like a moment of empathy.
It was, yeah.
And connection.
Yeah, a real breakthrough moment for her.
Right.
And as she continued to listen without judgment,
Yeah.
her father started to open up.
Wow.
He shared things that he had never shared before.
Because he felt safe.
Yeah, he felt safe.
He felt heard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that really created a bridge between them,
Right.
allowed them to connect on a deeper level
Yeah.
and build a more, loving and respectful relationship.
That's a really powerful story.
Yeah.
And it really shows how listening isn't about agreeing
Right.
with the other person, but it's about understanding them.
It's about, creating that space for true connection and empathy.
Yeah, we've talked about the benefits of good listening in our personal lives or professional lives, but I'm curious to explore its impact on a broader scale. Like how can listening contribute to a more peaceful and harmonious world, do you think?
That's such an interesting question.
Yeah.
I really believe that listening is fundamental to a healthy society.
Okay.
When we listen to each other, really listen
Yeah.
with empathy and compassion,
Yeah.
it cultivates understanding, it builds bridges, it breaks down barriers.
So it's the opposite of
it is,
division and conflict.
Absolutely, Think about all the conflicts that we see in the world today.
Yeah.
So many of them stem from a lack of listening,
Right.
a refusal to see the world through someone else's eyes.
It's like we're trapped in our own echo chambers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like surrounded by people who agree with us, never having to engage with opposing viewpoints.
Right, and that just breeds more division, more polarization.
Yeah.
It creates this us versus them mentality,
Right.
which is so harmful.
And we lose the ability to have like civil discourse,
Absolutely.
productive conversations about difficult topics.
Right, we just shut down.
Yeah.
We get defensive.
Right.
We attack each other.
And we get nowhere.
We get nowhere. Exactly.
Yeah.
But when we choose to listen, even to those who hold different beliefs than us, it opens the door for dialogue, for understanding, for compromise.
Wait, it's like that's the first step towards a more
It is
peaceful and just world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really believe that if we could all just listen to each other a little bit more, the world would be a much better place.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into the art of listening, I want to leave our listeners with a call to action.
Okay, love that.
To our listeners, I challenge you to make a conscious effort. To listen more deeply to the people in your lives, whether it's your partner, your child, your colleague, or even a stranger you encounter.
Absolutely.
Make a commitment to truly hear them without judgment, without interruption. And with a sense of genuine curiosity.
Beautiful.
And as you do that, pay attention to the impact that it has. Not only on the other person, but on yourself. Like notice how it changes your perspective.
Absolutely.
Deepens your connections. Brings more peace, harmony into your life.
It's amazing how much of a difference it can make.
And who knows? Maybe if enough of us commit to becoming better listeners, we can create a ripple effect
that spreads throughout the world.
Yeah, I love that.
That's a beautiful thought, Mike.
Yeah.
And I believe it's possible because, the power of listening is truly transformative.
Well said. Now, before we move to our final segment, I want to remind our listeners that this is just the beginning of our exploration of listening.
Yeah, stay tuned. We're going to be back with even more
advanced techniques to help you become like master listeners.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So until then, happy listening.
Okay, so we're back with the English Podcast Lab. And, we're continuing our deep dive into becoming better listeners.
And in this final segment, we're going to give you guys some next level listening strategies, because it's not just about ditching the bad habits, but actively developing the skills that make every interaction, richer and more meaningful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We want to take it to the next level.
Yeah, so let's jump into a scenario I think a lot of people can relate to, okay?
Okay.
Imagine you're in a meeting.
Yeah.
And someone's presenting an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of out there.
Okay, yeah, I've been there.
Like it's
tempting to zone out.
Yeah.
Or start crafting that brilliant counter argument in your head.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I can't wait to tell them where they're wrong. Yeah, but what if we flip the script?
Okay.
And use this as a chance to flex our listening muscles.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so what would that look like?
So instead of jumping to judgment.
Yeah.
Right? We ask ourselves what if this wild idea actually has something to it?
Okay.
Approaching it with genuine curiosity, even if we're initially skeptical.
Yeah, so really trying to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Even if it seems, a little bit far-fetched at first.
Yeah, and using those, those active listening tools we talked about earlier, clarifying questions, summarizing what we've heard.
Right, yeah.
Really trying to
grasp their perspective.
Yeah,
totally. And you never know, right? Maybe that what you initially thought was a crazy idea actually sparks a whole new thought process for you.
Right. Or maybe it just helps to, build a better connection with the speaker.
Absolutely.
Even if you don't end up, they'll appreciate that you took the time to listen and try to understand.
Totally. Everyone wants to feel heard and understood.
Right.
And even if you don't agree with them, just the fact that you're making that effort can go a long way in building that relationship.
Okay, now let's tackle another common challenge. Listening when emotions are running high.
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one.
So say you're having a tough conversation with a loved one, and things start getting heated.
Right.
That's when those emotional regulation skills we talked about really come in handy.
They do. Yeah.
So recognizing when our own emotions are about to take over and taking a step back to cool down.
So important, because when we're flooded with emotions, whether it's anger, frustration, sadness, it's really hard to truly listen to the other person.
Yeah, you're not really hearing them.
You're not.
You're just reacting. Caught up in your own stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so easy to do that.
It is.
Because we're human,
Yeah, we're human.
But it's important to to catch ourselves when we're doing it.
Absolutely.
And try to take that step back.
Yeah, to create that space, where you can kind of calm down and really hear what the other person is saying.
So take a pause. Maybe excuse yourself.
Yeah.
Take some deep breaths.
Yeah, go for a walk.
Yeah, whatever helps.
Whatever it takes, to kind of just get some distance from the situation.
To calm down, to de-escalate.
Yeah, and then when you come back to the conversation, really focus on listening with empathy, Try to understand the other person's feelings, even if you don't agree with their perspective.
Yeah, understanding doesn't equal agreement.
Exactly. It's not about saying, I agree with you. It's about saying, I understand where you're coming from.
Right. I see your perspective.
Exactly. It's about validating their feelings, creating that space where they feel heard and understood.
Yeah.
And that can really de-escalate the situation.
You're a big proponent of nonverbal communication.
I am, yeah.
So how can we use use body language to become better listeners?
Well, our nonverbal cues speak volumes, right?
Yeah.
Even if we're not aware of it.
Right.
So when we want to be good listeners, it's really important to be mindful of our body language.
Okay, so what are some of the key nonverbal signs that convey active listening?
Well, eye contact is huge.
Okay.
It shows the speaker that you're focused on what they're saying.
You don't want to stare them down either.
Right, exactly. It's about finding that balance,
Right.
Making natural eye contact that feels comfortable for both of you.
Okay, and then what about like posture?
Yeah, posture is important too, Like leaning slightly towards the speaker can show that you're attentive. Whereas, crossing your arms, looking away, that signals that you're closed off or not engaged.
So it's like sending those signals of interest and engagement.
Yeah, and facial expressions are really important too,
Okay.
Like a warm smile, a nod of understanding.
Yeah.
These can go a long way in making someone feel heard and validated.
Good, like you're with them.
Yeah, it's about reflecting the speaker's emotions
Mm-hmm.
to show that you're really connecting with them on that emotional level.
We've talked a lot about listening to others.
Yeah.
But I think it's equally important to listen to ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
Self-awareness is like the foundation of good communication, If we're not tuned into our own thoughts and feelings and needs, we can't fully show up for others.
Yeah, we can't really be there for them
We can't,
if we're not there for ourselves.
Right, exactly. So it starts with paying attention to that inner voice,
Yeah.
What are the stories that we're telling ourselves?
Right.
What emotions are we experiencing?
And asking, what do I need in this moment?
Yes, exactly. If we're not taking care of our own needs, we can't truly give to others in a genuine way.
So self-listening is a form of self-care.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's essential for building healthy relationships, both with ourselves and the people in our lives.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive into the art of listening, I want to encourage our listeners to see this as an ongoing journey. It's not about reaching perfection. It's about making a conscious effort to improve our listening day by day, conversation by conversation.
It's a practice, it's something that we're always working on.
And the rewards are amazing, I think.
They are, yeah.
Like good listening strengthens our connections, enriches our understanding, creates a more harmonious world for everyone.
Absolutely.
So go out there and listen with intention, with empathy, with an open heart.
Beautiful.
And thanks for joining us on the English Podcast Lab.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of communication.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, happy listening.